tonight reaches Kelly Lake. The Kiskatinaw River wildfire makes it all the way to the Alberta border. Evacuation alert. The PRD issues an alert for the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire. And cultural fire. First Nations use century-old mitigation methods. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight as the Kiskatinaw River wildfire has now reached Kelly Lake. Structure protection personnel are defending individual buildings tonight and will continue to do so until it's no longer safe for them. Trees and grass surrounding the building were burning, but so far no structures have been lost. The fire has grown to 7,385 hectares. It has now reached the Alberta-BC border. Late this afternoon, sustained winds of 40 kilometers an hour with gusts of up to 60 moving the fire east toward the border. Dry conditions and lack of humidity adding to firefighters' concerns. The fire has progressed both on its north and south flanks. The Peace River Regional District with a plea today to those who have defied evacuation orders. They say the fire cannot be contained and first responders may be forced to leave the area due to intensifying conditions. The PRD also adding rescuing residents who become trapped may not become possible. An emergency alert sent out this morning warning residents in the county of Grande Prairie living near the Alberta-BC border to leave immediately. The evacuation order is for everyone located north of Township Road 710 to 740 and east to the border to Range Road 130. Evacuees being told to report to the reception center at the library in Hythe. The evacuation alert along Township Road 710 has also been expanded. The Kiskatinaw River wildfire is now burning just inside the Alberta border. The fire service is completing the remaining structural protection for properties at risk within the county of Grande Prairie. And the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire has exploded in size. It's now listed at 7,733 hectares. The Peace River Regional District issuing an evacuation alert this afternoon. Now, the alert encompasses the Highway 97 area in the Bucking Horse area. It stretches from mile 170 to mile 180. Getting to the fire has proven difficult, so helicopters and air tankers are fighting the blaze from above. 76 firefighters are now currently on scene. It's been described as a highly vigorous surface fire. It's been displaying rank 4 and 5 fire behavior. It was discovered back on May 17th and was brought under control on May the 27th. But due to hot temperatures and high winds, the fire started burning out of control once again late last week. And crews are battling an out-of-control wildfire northeast of Fort St. John. The Goodlaw wildfire has grown to 70 hectares in size. It was discovered Wednesday and thought to be caused by lightning. The BC Wildfire Service says the fire is displaying rank 3 fire behavior with pockets of the blaze at rank 4. A helicopter is dousing the fire while a crew from the Wildfire Service is at the scene. And we're keeping an eye on a wildfire burning near Chetwynd. The Sundance fire is burning out of control near Highway 97. It's grown to 40 hectares in size and is 13 kilometers east of Chetwynd. It was discovered Wednesday night and is thought to be human-caused. 5 initial attack crews are fighting the fire with the help of helicopters in the sky. Motorists are being reminded to check Drive BC for highway closures. And a campfire ban now into effect for Northeast BC. As of noon today, Category 1 open fires will be prohibited across the Dawson Creek, the Fort St. John, and the Fort Nelson fire zones. The prohibition applies to all public and private lands. Burn barrels, tiki torches, and fireworks are just some of the activities also covered by the ban. However, the prohibition does not include the use of outdoor stoves. A Category 2 and 3 fire ban has been in effect since mid-May. As wildfire danger increases across the province, several First Nations are working with the BC Wildfire Service and have already taken significant steps to reduce the risks to their communities. Using techniques known as cultural fire and prescribed burns, the goal is to reduce the fuel load in areas of the forest where uncontrolled wildfires could potentially pose a danger to both life and property. Preparations for these controlled burns often can take months or years, and they're only done under ideal conditions. According to oral histories, First Nations in BC have been using fire in this way for thousands of years.
Before colonization, back in the early 1900s, they would practice cultural burning, clearing off the land to reduce the wildfire risk, but also it was the only means to manage the overloading of fuel on the ground.
The BC Wildfire Service has been assisting First Nations with these traditional practices for many years. Last year, 21 burns planned were carried out, First Nations across the province. Well, the pipeline debate here in BC is heating up once again, and it's pitting our province against other premiers and newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney. The NDP government has been unequivocal in their opposition to fast-tracking a new pipeline through northern BC, but as Ben Milger reports, they may not have a say in the matter.
Locked in a trade war with the United States, many Canadian leaders see a new pipeline to BC's north coast as a way to diversify the national economy. But the BC government is not on board.
As the Premier said very quickly, that idea doesn't make sense to us.
We've been down this road before when Enbridge proposed the Northern Gateway pipeline to carry Alberta bitumen to a marine terminal in Kitimat. In 2016, the federal Liberals banned oil tanker traffic on BC's north coast, essentially sinking the controversial project. With Canada's place in a shifting geopolitical landscape uncertain, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith thinks the proposal deserves another look.
Got to work with where I think we're going to have the most success. And where I think we'll have the most success right now is working on a corridor between Hudson Bay and Port of Prince Rupert.
With a new Prime Minister at the helm promising to fast-track certain projects deemed in the national interest, conditional federal support appears to be on the table.
The world's certainly more divided and dangerous, and the imperative of making Canada an energy superpower in all respects has never been greater.
Pointing to the cost overruns and delays that left taxpayers on the hook for the $34 billion Trans Mountain expansion, BC's ruling NDP doesn't think there's an economic case for another new pipeline.
This would be a colossally expensive and not economic proposal. It's a political proposal, and fair enough. But we have a different view. The Premier has expressed very clearly his view of non-support for that.
With other premiers already voicing support, BC's government is an outlier this time. If a company steps forward offering to take the project on, the province may not be able to stop it. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Well, for the first time in 6 years, no road fatalities were reported in BC over the Victoria Day long weekend. 3 were reported last year, and an average of 4 fatalities between 2019 and 2023. But the RCMP say they still found too many examples of irresponsible driving. Over the course of the 3 days, traffic officers wrote almost 2,000 speeding tickets, and 79 vehicles were impounded due to excessive speeding. Heart surgeons in Vancouver are calling it a once-in-a-lifetime gift, a $60 million donation that's expected to transform care across the province of BC and the country. Here's Andrew Johnson with more on what it'll mean for patients.
When I spoke with the head of cardiology here at Vancouver General Hospital, his excitement was infectious, and he has now assembled a team to lead a new world-class facility, thanks to one family's desire to give back. The Dilawri Cardiovascular Institute is being built from the ground up thanks to the largest ever donation to Vancouver's biggest hospital from the Dilawri Foundation. AJ Dilawri says his family was moved to help after his father received care from the team led by Dr. David Wood.
He and his team saved my father's life, and for that, my family will be forever grateful. We were compelled to pay that gratitude forward.
Wood, the Vancouver surgeon who has spent years assembling a team to lead what he says will become the Mayo Clinic of the North, will be a game changer for Canadian cardiac patients.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Here is not only money for a new tower, which will be a state-of-the-art outpatient cardiovascular tower, but here's a $25 million innovation fund. Fix the system, make the system better for patients.
But the money is already being put to work recruiting top doctors, some of whom Dr. Wood says are leaving the United States due to the policies of President Trump.
Given all the turmoil that's been happening globally, especially with our friends south of the 49th parallel, yes, it has been amazing that these very, very talented researchers, clinicians, world-leading surgeons now want to come to Canada.
They're hoping to break ground on the Dilawri Cardiovascular Institute in 2027 at British Columbia's largest hospital. This $60 million donation fueling some rare positive healthcare news with the system so strained right now right across the country.
There was no vote on the government's throne speech last night, but it was adopted anyways in the House of Commons.
I declare the motion, as amended, carried on division.
It was adopted on division, and that means no recorded vote was held. Earlier, the NDP had said they would vote against the speech, saying it offered few details about healthcare and housing. One day after U.S. President Donald Trump hiked tariffs on steel imports to 50%, there are growing calls for Ottawa to retaliate. The Prime Minister has said his government would take some time to consider its response, as they're currently in trade discussions with the U.S. CTV's Rachel Aiello has more from Ottawa.
Major steel CEOs and union leadership are meeting with officials on Parliament Hill today in an effort to convince Prime Minister Mark Carney to hit back at U.S. President Donald Trump's doubling of tariffs. Steel companies and workers are in town to impress on lawmakers the severity of the situation their sector is facing. Trump's 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum have effectively blocked these Canadian-made metals from entering the U.S. market. Now the sector wants Ottawa to stem the flow of unfairly traded steel coming into this country. But after her closed-door conversation with them, the industry minister was non-committal.
We're working on solutions. That's why the industry and myself will continue to engage in the coming hours and days.
This comes amid confirmation that Carney and Trump are in direct communication. But the government's keeping tight-lipped about the state of those trade talks.
We won't negotiate in public, and we'll let the Prime Minister do his work, and we will let all ministers do their work.
Though with new data showing Canadian exports have fallen sharply in light of U.S. tariffs, Ontario's premier is once again making the rounds on American networks, emphasizing the cross-border impact of the trade war.
We buy $30 billion of steel and aluminum off the U.S., and now we're just going to start onshoring everything.
Ford said today that while he's hopeful the high-level negotiations between the administrations advance towards a deal, if a resolution isn't reached soon, the federal government should retaliate against Trump's latest trade action.
And it seems President Trump's trade war has some Canadians rethinking whether our closest neighbor is a friend or foe. A new Leger poll sampled 1,500 Canadians. It found nearly one-third now view the United States as a neutral country. 27% still view the U.S. as an ally, while 26% see it as an enemy country. Older Canadians were more likely to consider America as an enemy than younger Canadians. And Canadian exports plummeted in April as U.S. tariffs hammered demand for Canadian goods, and that's led to this country posting its largest merchandise trade deficit on record. Stats Canada says some of the decline is due to a strengthening Canadian dollar and the push to export goods before the tariffs went into effect. CTV's John Benaveli-Rao has more.
When it comes to comparing how much merchandise was brought into Canada versus exported out last month, the difference has never been so stark, with that trade deficit growing to just over $7 billion in April, compared to just over $2 billion in March. Reflecting in large part a plunge in overall exports being sent to the U.S., which tumbled nearly 16% month over month.
We're looking right at the heart of the storm of tariffs, and they showed a huge drop in our exports, a drop in two-way trade.
The fallout from the slew of tariffs imposed by the U.S. president on cars, steel, aluminum, and other items was just partly to blame for the drop in exports. So too was the flood of goods that poured into the U.S. ahead of the tariffs, which built up inventories. Exports of autos to the U.S. falling 23% in April, while exports of consumer goods fell 15%.
These are semi-automatic machines.
Toronto-based Ultraform Manufacturing makes components for auto parts and has seen such a drop in demand, its employees have had to switch to work sharing, for now at least avoiding layoffs.
So we definitely had a drop of almost 35% in our business, and we are trying to figure it out what is the best way to mitigate that drop.
The value of energy exports also dropped, but that was due to lower oil prices, while overall exports fell to their lowest level in 2 years. And some expect things to continue to deteriorate, with pressure mounting to reach a trade deal and companies looking for certainty.
Hopefully we can get back to an agreement that is respected by both countries and so that companies know the rules of the game.
If there was a silver lining, it was that Canadian exports to countries outside of the U.S. did grow by about 3%, which could reflect efforts to better broaden export markets. John Benavalli-Rouse, CTV News, Toronto.
And more than 23,000 Ford SUVs are being recalled over a risk of detaching parts. Now, according to Transport Canada, the recall includes 2016 and 17 models of both the Explorer and the Police Interceptor utility. Now, that's a variant of the SUVs designed for use for law enforcement. The organization says some of the trim on the doors may not properly attached and could separate, increasing the risk of a crash. Owners of impacted vehicles will be notified by mail, although Ford says the corrective actions for the problem are still being worked out. The Israeli military has recovered the body of 2 Israeli hostages. They were killed in the Hamas-led October 7th attack on southern Israel. One of them was also a Canadian citizen. 70-year-old Judy Weinstein Haggai was born in the U.S., but she moved to Canada at the age of 3. And her husband, 72-year-old Gadi Haggai, were both killed during the attack on their kibbutz. Their bodies were found in a southern area of Gaza overnight and are being brought back to Israel for forensic identification. 56 hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. At least 20 are still believed to be alive. All right, please do stay tuned. I'll be right back with a look at weather.